Hi guys, this is Thomas with another video. This time I'll show you a 32-bit Windows DLL. Let's get into the juicy parts on how to do this. Again, you can create a new project to a group with new file new. File new, and then over here 32-bit DLL. I'll do this. I like the project manager actually. It's kind of convenient. Right click on here and then add new project. And I want to create a 32-bit Windows DLL. This actually stands for Dynamic Link Library. There's a big history on this. Let's not get into this one. There's pros and cons to this using DLLs. I actually like DLLs. It's a cool concept. Since Windows itself is event-based, if you think about it, instead back in the DOS days where it was very linear. You program functions and procedures top down, and it was single threaded, right, for DOS applications way back then. And the entire concept of Windows, that it's based on messages, that your applications have to respond to messages that Windows will send to your application. You can just, because you're using assembly, you have the power of picking, okay, which message would you like to handle and process? Some of these messages that Windows will send you, you must respond to. And some of the messages are you can just ignore or process them and handle them the way you see fit. So this is why I really like Windows. It's still simple in my opinion, and it's a lot easier than way back in the DOS days. And we'll get to some of the more interesting parts hopefully someday in the future. So let's create a DLL. Click OK. Alright, so what happens is Visual MASM created a new project right up here. You can see win32.dll. And size in bytes is 0 because nothing has been assembled yet. Nothing has been linked or built. The initial stub code that I create here is very explanatory on its own with the comments, I hope. Every Windows DLL needs an entry point, but it doesn't execute. It's just an entry point that when Windows applications share DLL, they can be shared across multiple applications. And but you need to tell Windows what happens for certain types of messages. So in this case, this stub will just show you the initial entry point and how you can handle, for example, when the DLL process has been attached to or handled to your application and how you want to respond to it. Remember, using assembly, you have full control. The same thing for single-threaded and same thing for multi-threaded applications. Not going to go into the details yet because this is really assembly tutorials that you hopefully can learn in the meantime, until one day I'll have time to actually create the tutorials. I'm not an expert either, keep that in mind. I just like to go deeper and deeper over time and create real Windows applications with Visual MASM as well. I'm talking about commercial applications, not just playing around with Hello World applications, but solving real issues. And I've explained this to one of my other videos, that one of my goals with Visual MASM is that I want to create a commercial application with Visual MASM with pure assembler talking to a very modern cloud-based backend written in C# on Amazon AWS Cloud EC2 instances. In production, I already have some of these systems running in production for several years, so I'm very familiar with C# since it came out in beta back in 2001. But I'm coming back to my assembler love, which is fascinating. But I digress. I'm going to start going into topics I don't want to really go into right now. Anyways, here is your main procedure for your DLL. Very important. If you look on the lower right here, Visual MASM detects how many functions you have within this current code editor that's open. I can double click on it and it will jump to this function in it. Same thing for my procedure down here. This is where you would add your your functions that you want to probably export. By exporting, I mean your application or other applications have access to this function. This is where you would add them. So is an initial step. It gets you going very easily. The include file here that MASM 32R2 has, if you go inside here, it has a bunch of include files included. This just makes it very convenient as a one-liner. It's kind of cool, actually. This happened later on with MASM 32 over the years, so it's a very convenient way of doing it. Cool. Let's see if this even works, right? Oh yeah. Okay. So I explained the initial stub for the Windows, and then there's another file called the module definition file. If I open in here, this is a little interesting. So if you're familiar with Windows DLLs, like I said, you probably want to export functions so that you or other applications can take advantage of these functions. I should say procedures, right? Yeah, probably. So in assembly, these are actually procedures, but I keep saying functions. But I meant the same thing. It's really procedures. So this module definition file is really required when you are creating a Windows DLL. Actually, it's not even required if I remember correctly. But it makes things easier if you want to export the files. I think it is required. I'm confused. Yeah, it is required. So Visual MASM creates this initial stub for you. The library name will be replaced by Visual MASM with the project name, in this case Win32DLL. Here the description, typically you probably want to put your copyright information in here. You can, of course, put anything you want. It's a text. It goes up to 255 characters long. There's other commands for the module definition file. If you have the original MASM books, which I have, there's a few other commands that you can put in here and fine-tune the module definitions themselves. The more important one is really the exports section. This is where you list your functions. So you don't have to maintain this at all. You don't have to make changes if you don't want to. Visual MASM will update these for you if it finds the right information. In this case, the exported functions will be replaced with all the functions you have in your project, and Visual MASM will put them in there. How this works? Let's do this. First of all, let's save this. Let's see where it's saving. Yeah, it's saving into the Visual MASM Common Projects folder. Save, save, save. Okay, we're good. All right, let's do this. Right-click on the project. And if you noticed, Visual MASM detects based on the type of project it is a DLL. So now you have this new option here called Export Functions. Let's cross fingers that everything works. Yeah, so here you can define and mark which functions in your projects you want to export. And so by default, if you check this here on the top, all of the functions that you would have in the DLL would be listed. So if you had more than one assembly file, which you most likely will have, you commonly have a ton of assembly files in your DLL. Visual MASM will go ahead and scan through all source files and then list all the functions in here project-wide. So if you have a couple hundred in here, no problem. Check it here and everything is marked to export. Click export. Now by default, the module definition file, if you just list the function name the way it is in your assembly code, like this, it's kind of hard to see here because of the yellow, but it says my procedure here and want to export as my underscore procedure, it would do that. It would actually just list the my procedure. Oh, let's do this. Let's just do it. Right. So if you notice, it replaced the library name with the project name here. It doesn't change the description. That's totally up to you. It won't. Visual MASM will not update this, but it does update the exports function list or procedure list, I should call it, with the two functions that we marked. Now, if you noticed, it doesn't rename them as an exported different function name. So let's do this again. Right click, export functions, but this time I want to call this something else, like test if I could spell it, test procedure. Press enter. So my function itself in the assembly source code is called my procedure, but I want to export it as test procedure. Click export, and this basically means for the module definition file, when the linker under MASM sees this, it will use this as an exported function name. Keep that in mind. You can do that. You can, of course, do this manually. You don't have to do this with export functions right here. You can maintain this entire file manually for you. It only is modified. Hold on, let me think. Yeah, actually, yeah. So Visual MASM will update this when you're about to build it, like so. Oh, let's see. Why is it not creating the output file? Let's take a look. So we created the assembly file here, and let's see on some test procedure. Oh, yep. Okay. Yeah, let's do it like this and save it, and let's see if I can build it. Yeah, I have to go back here, export. I wonder why. Okay, let's try it again, and now build it. Oh, so it did work. All right, so let's just leave it for now. Okay, so let's see. There's another error. Oh, it's a warning. Okay, yeah. So one more thing. I have the highest level of warnings enabled for the MASM assembler, from the Microsoft MASM assembler. That means even small warnings will show up if anything's unusual, out of the ordinary, basically. But in this case, you can ignore the warning. It did create the final DLL. It's about 2.4K. So in this process, the linking process will use the module definition file. Let's go and check it out if it's really true. Show it in the Explorer. Let's go to the release, and there's the DLL. There it is. Cool. How easy was that? All right. So Windows DLLs for large applications or for code that you want to share, not just code, but also for data. So it's basically for anything you want to share across applications, or reuse it all the time. Anything, any data or functions or procedures you want to share. Windows DLLs. All right, I hope that's it. I hope you liked it, and see you in the next video. Cheers.